That way you'll know how to get back to it when you don't know where else to go. So Hara is called the seat of our center. It literally connects us not only to our center self, or the self energy that I suggested is qualified through those C words like compassion, courage, clarity, confidence. But it also connects us to the center of the earth. It is our earth center. It is our center of gravity. And so it literally keeps us from falling off the planet. For those of you that work with the chakra system, you could say that the Hara is inclusive of the first three. So because it spans through the diaphragm of pelvic floor, or what we call the mula, the root, M-U-L-A, it also harnesses the capacity of root chakra, Muladhara, which is to say that the bottom layer of Hara reunites us with the divine contact of the ground. Unites us to the ground of our being. Is the internal sense of safety and rootedness. Deep, deep roots that nourish in us a sense of belonging. And because Hara encompasses the three chakras of the low body, it also incorporates the powers that sex chakra governs. So it's also our creative life force, connected to the water element and to the vital state of the kidneys, which ancient Chinese healers would call the tree of life. Kidneys, kidney chi, dictating our deep health, our primordial essence, our youthfulness. Our essential immunity. So our constitutional chi, how strengthened we are in resilience to either emotional toxicity or environmental toxicity, the kidneys being the great purifier, clean that out. Fight off the impact of infection, whether that be through the psyche or through the carbon body. And the third chakra, of course, Manipura, the lustrous gem, solar, power, identity, willingness, determination, intentionality, things we'll really need to bring with us if we're to continue the practice of being an insight seeker, a truth dweller. Our vital center. So Hara is inclusive of all three of those chakras. And it's also like the body coordinate to check in consistently through glimpse practices to see how fully am I living in awareness now. The body coordinator to see how fully am I living in awareness presently. And have I been occupying or taking up residence in the space above the collarbones? Or have I renewed the contact of the being, breathing bliss body that resides in the belly? Have I hung out in the body today? There's a James Joyce novel that starts with a line about a character named Mr. Duffy. The first line of the book, which, by the way, I'm always interested to see in great novels, what the first line is. Just like with the Buddha's first noble truth, what's the first line? How do we enter into this narrative? And so in this James Joyce book, he writes of Mr. Duffy in the first line, and he says, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body. And I think that's so curiously eloquent to describe the way that most of us tend to hang out in some protector field, either outside of center self or above the collarbones. Most of us actually don't remember during the moment-to-moment momentum of the day that there is a living, breathing being underneath the collarbones. We really hang out here and above. And I'm going to speak a little bit more today towards the mental faculties of the neocortex and how neurological functioning is helpful in trauma response, but again, insufficient in healing. And the quote that came forward yesterday I shared was, if we are to fully heal, if we are to be greater than the imprints of our trauma, then we have to move forward from the body. So it's the physical embodiment of the original life force in all humans, and it's an inherent, innate source that doesn't need to be built, but we do need to be reminded of it, that it's there, that it's always been there, that we're born with it, no matter how much destruction and decay we're exposed to or have caused ourselves or others. We still have Buddha nature. Even the most psychopathic beings have a Buddha nature, and it's been studied with this IFS system that those who have severe levels of psychosis and have subjected themselves or others to heinous abuse has a Buddha nature, but has been so covered up by layers of distorted parts. So it is inherent in all of us. Even our former president. And actually, Ram Dass on his altar had a beautiful altar with Ganesh and photos of dear friends and loved ones and of his teachers, and a picture of Stalin on his altar. To cultivate a feeling tone of compassion for even somebody he felt such strong disdain for, that he really felt that was a reminder of why it is we practice. If I can recognize the Buddha nature in this man, then when things have gone awry in my internal state, or I've made a mistake or taken a wrong turn, I'll know how to forgive. Anyhow, the Hara is said to be the site from which energy fans out, and I tried my best to allude to that in the yin poses yesterday as we did some breathing techniques to cultivate connection to Hara on the inhale, and then exhale and fan that prana, that chi force out from the site where it's born, from the reservoir of chi. Another term for the Hara that I heard I love so much is the elixir field, where like this sweet nectar moves through the body from. It's like, why wouldn't we want to hang out there? If I ever start a green juice cafe, that's probably what I'll call it. So please don't spill that. The elixir field, why not hang out there? So this is the interesting piece with why I love tying Hara to asana, to the yoga practice, because they do come from two different traditions, and what I've done is just sought to combine them in a way that feels like a beneficial marriage. Asana and Hara. If Hara is the place where energy fans out from, and the purpose of asana is to gather energy and distribute energy, do you agree with that kind of general definition or purpose? Yoga, asana, gathers energy and distributes it. Then you can start to see how awareness of the vital center in which energy is distributed from can be really helpful in upgrading your potency of practice in a physical sense. Because now you know where to orient from and then move through. We experimented with that a little bit yesterday in the standing sequence when I had us breathe and inhale from Hara up and then exhale and bring it back down. So that becomes not just a physical practice or a exercise or a activity in stretching, but yoga literally becomes the management of prana, gathering from your center self and distributing it to where it needs to go. Even if I were to just stub my toe, there's a quick reflex now that I've ingrained in any minor source of pain or major injury or heartbreak on the physical or emotional sense. Any pain is enriched and soothed by the healing balm of inhaling to gather the self-energy at Hara and exhaling to send it to the place that really needs it. And it's like such a healing elixir balm of highest self just showing up, the inner Buddha in you just showing up to care for the parts that are grieving or wounded, even minor. Again, like when I stub my toe, I quickly just send it there. It's a helpful little glimpse practice as well. So the intelligence of the body literally draws its wisdom source from the Hara. And when parts of the body have a direct access to Hara, and parts of our psyche have access to Hara, then those parts can be healed. So what I said in the beginning of our weekend together, all of those days ago, was that any teachings, any teacher, any practices, any healers should really just be reminding you of your own inherent source of healing. And in that way, the long-term sustainability of my job is rather threatened. If I can teach you to do it on your own and recognize that you have the inherent resources to do it on your own, that will be success. Again, still working out how that shapes in a business model. But truly, we do have the only resource to heal ourselves. It's said to build Hara. Or to, I shouldn't say build Hara because it's there. It doesn't need to be built. There's no efforting that needs to happen to create it. It's already there. But our access ways and our pathways to it and our neurological understanding and our embodied understanding of it being there, those pathways need to be cultivated. So to live from Hara, or at least regularly visit Hara, it's suggested that you need 3 things. 3 pillars of Hara, if you'd like to make a list. The first is experience, right? So we actually need to experience Hara for ourselves, the inner ripening of the connection to the wellspring of our existence. There's a ripening that's already starting to occur in each of you after just a couple days of practice. And again, it's not always immediate or obvious, but I'm sure in brief glimpses already, there's been a So the retreat I spoke of that I really was challenged by, I was doing a lot of Hara meditations, and it took about 3 to 4 deep days of practice to arrive in a place where my experience of Hara was this sudden insight of how it just is always radiating from the center, and I've just been living at a level of the coarse mind and hadn't dropped into the subtle fine layers of awareness enough to recognize the strong radiation from the center. But around day 3, or maybe it was day 4, I woke really, really early in the morning and realized that my dreams had just been Hara, Hara, Hara. And waking up in the morning, and as I'm getting ready and brushing my teeth and getting ready for the day, still it's just Hara, Hara, pulsing, radiating, this kind of really beautiful, powerful, but delicate, still orb And it took kind of going through the day and the regular monotony of tasks and eating and this and that slowly I started to build back up to the course mind. So I kind of was burying this distinct connection to Hara in kind of immediately consistent manner. But knowing it was there and having really experienced that, it then became easier to drop back into it when I was willing, when all parts of myself were willing to drop out of the course mind again. So we need to have that experience for ourselves to really know and trust that it's there. And you can hear it and practice it theoretically, but until there's been a very subtle insight around the experience, it hasn't quite landed yet. And you know what often opens the door to that layer of fine-tuned awareness is suffering. It's literally when we're closest to God. Every ache and every glimmer of hope becomes so obvious and examined. Suffering is when we're closest to God, and it opens the door to being willing to experience a depth of the system that isn't suffering. When we get desperate to feel well, then we'll find out where that wellspring is. Thank God for those days and months and years when I felt lost. And when that time comes again, I'll greet it and recognize it is material for my evolution. I might not be stoked. But can you see that lens, and this is, again, the first, second, and third noble truth wrapped up in a nutshell, the lens of turning our paradigm towards suffering as an invitation rather than using all of our life force to consistently avoid and resent and evade suffering makes a much juicier experience. Grief unites us. I could not teach with the level of compassion that's available to me now had I not experienced loss or a breakup or death or insecurity or uncertainty in my own personal sphere. Because when others then walk into the doors holding that same type of burden, I can understand in my bones. So it makes us much more compassionate. And when we've crawled in and out of those caves of misery, we have a much wider, more tolerant understanding of other beings who are suffering and recognize that that's not all that they are. That even Stalin has an inner Buddha, and he has many parts that were disillusioned, you could say. So experience means we need to feel it in an embodied way, and also the experience of suffering or grief or sorrow, the experience of the First Noble Truth, sparks in us the fuel we need to be inspired to practice. And that's the second pillar of the Hara field, is that we need to practice it. We need to train in cultivating pathways to get back to it and return to Hara daily. I have a note here, progressive integration of the individual with his being. What better way to describe yoga than that? The progressive integration of an individual with his being, or with his wisdom nature, with her Buddha seed, with their essence. So we need practice life. We need to return regularly to the inner altar, to the subtle body space. Dine with the divine daily, even for half a gataka. How did that meditation feel this morning?
So
good. Bearable, at least.
Yeah.
Blissful at most in moments. And then so much in between, too. Okay, so the third pillar is insight. Because we do harness so much power in the mind, which I'll call the insight center. It's the space where we have complex realizations and dynamic understandings and are able to reflect. The insight center will need to use the faculties of the mind to help build the faculties of the belly brain, which also has its own capacity for meaningfulness and memory. So we need to understand Hara on an emotional and an analytical level, and that's through teachings, through reading about it, through hearing about it from others, training in it, going on retreat, being absorbed in the teachings and the wisdom traditions that suggest this is true. We need to hear it first because we are a tribal species and we're not going to take truths for truth unless in some way they're validated by others. I really feel like that's true. So we need to actually realize its power and wholeness, be educated. So today already, we've gathered insight on an analytical level about some of the languaging around Hara. We've also experienced just arriving in it. And now we'll train in the cultivation of our pathways and our embodied presence of practicing returning there and practicing building our pranic reserves there. So one of the ways I suggested we do that is through that standing sequence for the GI health, our intestinal tract. So we'll do a standing cultivation of Hara practice, and then we'll do some seated breathwork practice as well. So let's get up. Hands to low belly, eyes soften, gaze moves down and in, and then go home, go home, go home. Back, down and in, back home to Hara. And just a very action of placing your hands there will start to invite the pathways of prana to travel back home, back home, back home. See to it that as you stand in this resting Tadasana, you start to invite in those three bandwidths of the three chakras, the grounded belonging, the creative feminine rhythm of ancient life, the power and dedication to practice. And so we'll inhale and we'll reach the fingertips up and come onto the toes, lengthening the whole GI tract, and then we'll exhale, draw the heels down and bend. Staying out empty and rolling 3 times, more or less, in each direction. And then inhale strongly and press into the thighs, and exhale completely. And it's a very subtle pump back. Drawing back towards sacral plate. When you need to inhale, come back up and do it all again. Meet in a forward bend. See if you can engage with some Hara breath cycling here as you inhale into the low belly and all the way through the low core, even the back body, the kidneys, and the exhale you might spread down the hamstrings or up the back of the spine to the heart, or anywhere in the body that needs some upgrade. Sending this resource of inherent rich support from the Hara to any areas that need it most. Just about 3 to 5 more rounds of breath. Slowly come all the way to seated. And close your eyes, bring your hands to low belly once again. So we just did a standing practice for Hara cultivation. Now we'll do a seated practice. Again, these are glimpse practices, 30 seconds or so. First, just meditate on Hara as a wide sphere, an orb across the bottom of the ribs and the top of the iliac crest, all the way through the waist, the back body. And then see if you can pinpoint the very nucleus, which again is suggested to be about 3 fingers width below navel and 3 fingers width in towards the spine. So it's like the soft tissue in front of the sacrum, behind the pubic bone. The very center. Not the front body, not the spine, the center. As you inhale, pull the low belly and the very nucleus of Hara back towards the spine. So draw Hara back towards the sacrum. And then when you exhale, just widen that whole pool of Hara. Spread. Inhale, pull the soft tissue at the pit of the abdomen in towards the front of the spine, and then exhale, spread. Again, just like that. So you'll feel that the firmness of the low belly goes taut and draws back. Keep your hands on low belly, and this time as you inhale and draw back, see if you can draw back just from the centermost, but keep the surface expansive and actually drawing out into your hands. So it will look like the belly opens on inhale, but the pit of the abdomen, the nucleus of Hara, draws back. So it's an inhale, and we create more space in the center. And then you exhale and just widen or exude awareness from that space. Okay, so inhale. Pull the soft tissue back at the pit of the abs, but keep the soft, wide belly at the same time. And then exhale for more room to grow. Soft belly softens into your hands. Only drawing in or suctioning in like a vacuum from the centermost. More chi to grow at Hara, then you exhale and spread the chi field. 3 more breaths. You can release the inner method of the breath and just rest in awareness. Letting consciousness settle and spread. what the hell? Let's just do another brief haiku. Why not?